Welcome, guys. I'm very excited about today's guest. One of the biggest questions I get is how can we save money? And one of the biggest expenses as couples is our housing, especially when we're talking about renting. I know here in Raleigh, North Carolina, things are growing, and a lot of my friends are saying, I'm just sick and tired of the rent keeps going up, and I feel like I'm getting behind on things. Well, today's guest, Justin Pogue, is going to help us. Justin, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you.
Oh, great. I'm happy to be here.
I can't even count how many couples have asked me, like, can I get a better deal with my apartment? So I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting topic because when I went to start writing this book, I went into the different bookstores and I went to the real estate section. And all the books there were for owners, investors, and managers.
Yeah.
There was really nothing written from the renter perspective, but it's interesting because the renters are the other half of that coin.
Yes.
So what people need to understand is that landlords have an inordinate number of problems that they're dealing with. And the idea behind my book is if you can help them with any of those problems, then they will actually pay you in the form of lower rent. Just like when you're hungry, you have a problem, you go into a restaurant, they feed you, you pay them. Landlords work in much the same way. So one interesting tip to save money on rent is the timing of when you're looking for an apartment.
Really?
So most people are trying to get situated in the summer, spring time frame. They're trying to get in before school starts and all of that kind of thing. And landlords know this, so they charge more during those months because more people are looking, there's higher demand. But there are also times during the fall and winter when people move out for all kinds of different reasons. They find a job in a new city, whatever their situation is, they move out. That leaves a landlord with a problem. I need to rent this place during the time of the year when not many people are looking. And as a renter, you can take advantage of that. And depending on which city you're in, the discount that you can get off of the rent can be as high as 7%.
Wow. I mean, that's significant savings because it feels like it's the opposite. A lot of couples tell me, hey, I just got my rent renewal, the renewal lease, and it's going up again. So that's a great tip. So let's say a couple does find themselves where the timing maybe isn't so great.
Right.
They've gotten a notice, the rent's going to go up again. Are there ways they can negotiate to minimize that financial burden?
Well, let's just start with the concept of knowing that I can negotiate, because not many people actually do. And then once you understand that concept, then it becomes a matter of how do I present my case? Most people just go in and whine about how the rent's gone up, it's gone up every year. Why are you doing this to me? Everything's against me, blah, blah, blah. The person who's in that office, especially if you're dealing with a larger apartment community, that person really doesn't have any control. They're basically in this example, they're basically the equivalent of the cashier at Walmart. Like they're not in charge of the actual dollar amount that you're paying. Now, they do report to someone who is and can make those deals and can negotiate. Now, the idea is how do I get this person to go to their boss and make that case for me? So there's a couple of things that go into that. Number one, have you been an easy resident to work with? Have you built the social capital by cleaning up after your pet, paying your rent on time, not complaining about minutia over the course of the year that you've been there? Those kinds of things really provide incentive for that leasing agent to work with you and want to go make your case to their boss.
Yeah.
Part of that is actually looking out in the marketplace at communities that you may want to live in. Now, those communities may be within a mile or two of the community you currently live in. They may be further away because, as we all know, in most metropolitan areas, the commute that people are willing to make over time has gotten longer, which means that the radius that they're willing to live in has gotten larger, which means that there's more competition for the community that you're living in.
Hmm.
So your landlord's competition is any community where you would choose to live. So
Gotcha.
go out and gather data from those communities and see what they're actually charging. And then bring that back to your landlord, in this case the leasing agent, and tell them, look,
Mhm.
these are the opportunities that I have out in the marketplace. Now, are they going to come down to what the lowest community out there is offering? Probably not.
Mhm.
But if they come down from their renewal offer, if they come down $50, $100, that's real money that is built into every month of rent that you're paying.
Yes.
Yeah. So when a
Yes.
lot of people talk about, oh, I'm going to save money, I'll just not buy that Starbucks latte every day. That's usually the advice that people get. Well, what happens is every morning you have that internal battle with yourself
Mhm.
about whether you're going to buy that latte or not.
Mhm.
In order to save the money, you have to win that battle every morning. Well, in this case, the savings that you've negotiated is built into your lease. It's
Mhm.
autopilot for the whole year. You don't have
Yeah.
that internal battle every day. So that $50 or $100 now turns into car payments. It turns into
Mhm.
money you can use for food. It turns into money that you can put towards your retirement account. It turns into money that you can set aside for emergencies.
Mhm.
Because you may have seen this statistic: 45% of American families don't have $400 to cover an
Yeah.
emergency.
Yeah. That's kind of scary.
It is, because we all know emergencies cost more than $400. Let's just face it. Um, so so part of the value of the savings is that it can help you deal with the other factors that are going on in your life, because it's not so much the money that you make at the top end, it's
Mhm.
the money that you keep at the end of the month that really has an impact on your quality of life. And that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that because in the community, I talk about going for the big one. So it's funny that you mentioned the lattes. I have nothing against you putting money towards something that you really enjoy and brings you joy. But if you're talking about saving significant amount of money, you're going to have to look like for the big wins. And housing is a huge expense for many families. So,
Yes, it
like you
is.
mentioned, it keeps growing, but that's one conversation. And for a year, you're saving that money and hopefully you're automating it to whatever you need to, whether it's paying down bills, saving, or investing.
But it gets better because every renewal is
Mhm.
typically based on a percentage of what
Mhm.
your previous rent was. So if that base amount is lower, then then each subsequent increase is smaller. So it kind of becomes the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, yeah, that's good to know how they calculate that.
Yeah. Now there's another strategy that's
Hmm.
really good, especially for couples with young children who one spouse may want to stay at home. Um,
Okay.
and that strategy is to actually work for the landlord. In some
Hmm.
states, there's a requirement that a property of a certain size, in California, it has
Hmm.
15 units, but any property of a certain size must have an employee who lives on site.
Really?
Not going to be the owner.
Yeah.
So, and who would the owner trust with that? Someone who has created the rapport with them, built that social capital with them,
Hmm.
who is trustworthy, who lives on site, knows the community, already knows the residents who are there. Now, in exchange,
Hmm.
this person typically receives either greatly reduced or possibly free rent. Uh,
Wow.
and that sounds great, and it is, but it gets even better because, let's say, for example, your rent is $2,000 a month. That's
Hmm.
$24,000 a year. But it's important to recognize that's after tax money. So that's
Mm.
money that you would have already paid taxes on it. So when you look at it in terms of gross earnings, probably closer to 30 or more, which is a great side gig. Is a great income for a side gig.
Hmm.
But there's other benefits too. So people come to look at apartments. This person typically be showing them, gives you an opportunity to network with people who are moving to the area, make
Hmm.
connections, form relationships. If you have young children, it also gives you a chance to earn resources for the family and still be at home with your child, helping to raise them.
Wow.
So it's it can be a very flexible option. Now, that is not for everyone, of course, kind of depends on your job and what your situation is, but it's one potential solution that a lot of people don't think about.
Yeah, I like that because there are some couples with kids. They know for sure that one of them needs to stay home, but if they can drastically cut expenses or, find these opportunities to save money for the family in other ways, that's a huge win. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you brought that up. So I know you shared some great tips about what to do. What about the other side of the coin? You've probably seen people make the biggest mistakes, some of them almost shooting themselves in the foot.
Mm-hmm.
So, for couples that are renting, what are the biggest mistakes they make when it's time to like renew their lease or try to get a deal with their apartment?
Yeah. So your relationship with your
Mhm.
landlord starts at the very beginning before we
Mhm.
even get to the lease renewal part. So
Gotcha.
earlier I kind of mentioned things that, like, for example, cleaning up after your pet.
Hmm.
That's a huge one. You want to build social capital with
Hmm.
your landlord in the community that you're living in before you need it. And
Yeah.
before the renewal part comes around and you're having that discussion, build that
Hmm.
up before. So you clean up after your pet, you make the community a great place to live, and
Hmm.
then the landlord wants to retain you as
Hmm.
a resident. So
Yeah.
that's where it starts. Other mistakes that people make is assuming that they can't negotiate. They assume
Hmm.
that it's just like I walk into Walmart, I pick something up off the shelf, the price is whatever it is, I go to the
Hmm.
cashier and I pay it. A lot of people assume that that's the situation, and it really
Hmm.
isn't.
Hmm.
Because as a landlord, when you look at their different apartment communities, there is massive competition, fierce competition for people who
Hmm.
have good credit, for people who have decent jobs, for people who know how to get along and play well with others.
Hmm.
Because if you have one or two bad apples in your community, it can drive everyone else out. And then where's the value of your investment in the community? So landlords fight tooth and nail to retain those
Hmm.
residents, to make their community a great place to live.
Yeah.
Um, so those are a couple of mistakes that people make, and it's just tweaking the thinking just a little bit, tweaking their
Hmm.
thinking just a little bit about how they approach renting.
Hmm.
The other mistake that people make is they go to these communities and there's all of these amenities. There's pools, there's volleyball courts, there's
Hmm.
tennis courts. It's fantastic. All of this stuff is available at my fingertips, blah, blah, blah. So they're going off of the emotion that seeing those things creates for them.
Hmm.
And those things are great and wonderful if you're actually going to use them. So what ends up happening is each of those amenities costs money to put in, it costs money to maintain, and the landlord has built those costs into the rents that they're charging.
Hmm.
So those communities with all those amenities, they're going to have higher rents. So it's really important to think about, what amenities do I really truly need? Whereas the volleyball court may not be one of those that I really truly need. In-unit washer and dryer may be
Hmm.
one of those amenities that I really need. So
Yeah.
really understand what you need versus what you want, um, and then you can choose a community that is more appropriate for where you are and what you're actually going to be using.
Great advice. I know a lot of couples definitely are going to be listening, taking notes. But if they want to learn more, if they want to grab your book, what's the best way they can do that?
So they can definitely check
Mhm.
out rentalsecrets.net. The book is available there.
Mhm.
They can also learn more about my background by checking out my LinkedIn page. And then I also have a YouTube channel, where I do kind of discuss some of the other things that are
Mhm.
going on with the book and give them more flavor and background on that.
Fantastic. So I'll include all those resources in the show notes, guys. That way you can go check it out. And really, if you're renting it, this is an investment. Like Justin pointed out, if you use just even some of these tips, you're not just saving one time. This is continuous for the year. And then when the renewal comes up, again, it's based on a lower rental amount. So definitely go for the big ones. Thank you so much, Justin. I appreciate having you on.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been a blast.